We're here at Legendary Muscle Cars in Huntington Beach, California. Dean Pallas, owner of Legendary Muscle Cars, will be installing our kit into this beautiful Stingray that you see behind us, which is owned by his brother Brian Pallas, Executive Director of the American Mid-Year Society. Before we get started, let's take a look at a few important pre-installation items. First off, we will be picking up this installation with the motor removed from the car and prepared for reinstallation with the new roller pilot bearing, clutch disc, and pressure plate. Removing the motor in order to install the TKO is our recommended method of installation. Your information packet included with your kit also has written instructions on how to perform this installation without removing the motor so that you can choose the installation that's best for you. The following installation information will focus on the issues that are unique and specific to installing a TKO into a Corvette. From this point on, we will discuss the TKO specific issues. The next step is to install the shifter body onto the transmission, so let's pick it up there. Before applying RTV sealant to the shifter and final installing it, you're going to first want to test fit it to make sure it can fit through the hole in the tunnel. If there's not enough room, push the transmission over slightly towards the passenger side of the car. This will give you enough room to fit the shifter assembly in through the floorboard. Once it's determined you have enough room to install the shifter assembly, go ahead and apply some RTV sealant to the side of the shifter housing that attaches to the bracket. Next, apply a little grease to the ball and the shifter stub. At this point, you're ready to install the shifter housing onto the transmission. When installing the shifter assembly onto the transmission, use an angled approach to get it through the hole in the floorboard. Once it's properly positioned, the ball of the shifter stub will be seated into the shifter rail socket. The next step is to attach the shifter assembly to the bracket using the 4 long attaching bolts. You can use Loctite if you wish. Check to make sure all the bolts are properly tightened. The shifter is now installed. It's that easy. With the shifter properly installed, it's now time to get back underneath the car and finish the installation. The next step is to install the speedometer cable. First, what you want to do is remove the rubber plug from the speedometer adapter hole in the side of the transmission. Also, you want to make sure that you lightly grease the inside of the speedometer gear where it rotates on the speedometer cable. Using the speedometer adapter bracket and speedometer adapter bolt, tighten the speedometer to the transmission. Lastly, go ahead and route the speedometer cable using the clips on the inside of your tunnel or the clips on the side of the transmission itself. Moving to the crossmember bracket, the first step is to take the new crossmember bracket and attach it to your main crossmember using the lower attaching bolt, allowing the bracket to hang freely. Do not tighten the bolt at this time. The next step is to install the exhaust pipe hanger and rubber transmission mount. Watch how Dean rotates the lower bracket up into position along with the exhaust pipe hanger and rubber mount. Once in place, attach the mount to the transmission using the 10mm bolts that are provided in your hardware kit. Now install the crossmember bracket to rubber transmission mount bolts. At this point, don't fully tighten them, as we need to make sure that the transmission and yoke are centered in the tunnel. Here you see Dean centering the transmission in the tunnel. It may be necessary to slot side-to-side holes in the crossmember mounting bracket to make sure that the transmission and slip yoke are properly centered. At this point, you'll notice that the transmission fits very tightly within the tunnel of your Corvette, especially with the 1963 to 1967 models. We've designed our crossmember bracket so that you have a correct driveline angle once fully installed. At the same time, the transmission should fit within your tunnel without touching it, sometimes with as little as 1/8 of an inch clearance between the top of the transmission and the bottom of the tunnel. Once fully installed, if the top of the transmission is hitting the bottom of your tunnel, give us a call and we can help you with some adjustments. The next step is the drive shaft. With the slip yoke installed onto the output shaft of the transmission and the rear end of the drive shaft installed to the pinion yoke, swing the front end of the drive shaft up and attach it to the strap style yoke. Using a 5/16 12-point socket, attach the slip yoke straps to the slip yoke. With all the bolts tightened, rotate the drive shaft and make sure that the slip yoke doesn't hit the passenger side wall of the tunnel or any of the emergency brake parts. After you have confirmed that the drive shaft and the slip yoke can rotate freely in the tunnel, go ahead and tighten up all crossmember bracket mounting bolts. Now let's install the reverse light switch connector. First, plug the connector onto the reverse light switch located on the driver's side of the transmission case. Next, simply plug in or splice the other end of the connector to your stock wiring harness. The last step before lowering your car is to fill the transmission with 3 quarts of GM Synchromesh transmission fluid. You can find GM Synchromesh at your local Chevy dealer. The filler plug is located on the passenger side of the transmission case. Well, that completes all of the undercar work. Next, let's lower the car back onto the ground to complete the final steps. After attaching the shift stick to the shifter stub, reinstall the console plate. Using a bit of Loctite, attach the shifter ball to the shifter stub and tighten it down. The last step before the test drive is to brake the transmission in. To do this, raise the rear wheels off the ground, start the car, and shift through all the gears for 10 to 15 minutes. Well, it's time for the test drive. Are you ready, Brian?
I sure am. This has been an exciting build-up to this moment. I think now is the time to see how this technology matches up to some old technology.
Well, let's fire it up.
Fire it up.
What do you think, Ryan?
I'm really excited, Jeff. I think we've got a great project here. I've just received the car. It's got a classic Chevy 5-speed in it. We put the Hillborn fuel injection system in it. I have some great expectations of this car, and so far I've not been disappointed. We're looking for an awesome hole shot out of this thing. We've gotten that. We're looking for some great cruise in 5th gear. We've gotten that. Now what I'm looking for, and I think we'll achieve it, is 25 miles to the gallon or more.
Well, good luck with your goals, and thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, the installation is complete. We're able to get it done without any modifications to the car. We have stock appearance and modern technology. How do you think things went, Dean?
Outstanding. That transmission fell in there like it was made for it. No surprises whatsoever. The installation was exactly as we planned. The instructions were very clear, precise. But I got to tell you, the best part was when we road tested the car. Many times when I traveled across country, I've wanted one more gear, and we got it. And now, when you reach for that 5th gear and you watch that tack drop 1,000 RPM, what a feeling. It's the best conversion I've ever seen. I love it.
Thanks a lot, Dean. Appreciate all the help, and we'll see you on the road.
You're welcome.